What would you do if you found a baby abandoned in the trash, crying and left to die? Grace Bennett didn't hesitate, she saved her. But that one act of kindness turned her life into a nightmare. She was accused, sabotaged, and nearly destroyed by the one person who should have been grateful. This is a story about love, lies, and a tiny voice that finally spoke the truth. Watch until the end, because what happens will restore your faith in justice. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you are watching from. You know, sometimes life puts you exactly where you need to be, even when you don't realize it yet. This is a story about love, deception, and the power of a mother's heart. It happened in Chicago, in one of those massive houses in the wealthy suburbs where everything looks perfect from the outside. But as you'll see, perfection can hide the darkest secrets. Let me tell you about Grace Bennett. For 12 long years, she worked as a housekeeper for the Wellington family. Grace was the kind of woman whose hands told stories, rough from years of cleaning, scrubbing, and caring for homes that weren't hers. She knew every corner of that enormous mansion better than she knew her own small apartment across town. It was a Tuesday evening, and the autumn sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Grace was finishing her shift, wiping down the marble countertops in the kitchen for the last time that day. She had a habit of talking to herself, a small comfort after years of working in silence. "Almost done, Grace," she whispered, folding her cleaning cloth with practiced precision. "Just a few more minutes." The house felt unusually quiet that evening. No footsteps upstairs, no voices echoing through the halls, no sound from the cook preparing dinner. Just the steady tick-tock of an old grandfather clock in the hallway. That's when she heard it. A sound so faint, she almost thought she imagined it. A tiny whimper, like a kitten crying in the distance. Grace stopped moving. Her ears strained to listen. Silence. "You're tired, Grace. Your mind is playing tricks," she told herself, shaking her head. But then it came again. This time, there was no mistaking it. A baby's cry, weak and desperate, coming from somewhere behind the house. Her heart jumped in her chest. Without thinking, she dropped everything and ran. Her footsteps echoed as she rushed through the back hallway, pushed open the heavy door, and stepped outside into the cool evening air. A row of garbage bins stood against the wall, waiting for the morning pickup. And that's where the crying was coming from. "No, please God, no," Grace whispered, her hands shaking as she approached. She pulled aside one of the trash bags, and her entire world stopped spinning. There, curled between garbage bags, was a baby girl, no more than a year old, shivering, crying, her diaper filthy, her little pink outfit stained and dirty. Her cheeks were red from crying, her tiny lips cracked from thirst. "Oh my God," Grace gasped, falling to her knees. She didn't hesitate for even a second. She scooped that precious child into her arms, holding her close to her chest. The baby grabbed onto Grace's shirt immediately, tiny fingers clutching desperately, as if she'd finally found safety after drowning in fear. Shush, sweetheart," Grace whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "You're okay now. I've got you. I'm right here." The baby's sobs slowly softened. Grace quickly checked her. No visible injuries, but she was clearly exhausted, dehydrated, and terrified. "Who would do this to you?" Grace asked softly, even though she knew the baby couldn't answer. Who could leave such an innocent child in the trash? Suddenly, she heard running footsteps from inside the house. "Grace! Oh my God, what happened? Where did you find her?" Grace looked up to see Catherine Wellington, the lady of the house, rushing toward her. Catherine was the picture of elegance, perfect blonde hair, expensive white dress, high heels clicking sharply on the concrete. But something felt off. Catherine looked panicked, yes, but also too composed. Her makeup was perfect, not a hair out of place, her breathing steady. She didn't look like a mother who'd been frantically searching for a missing child. "She was in the trash," Grace said breathlessly, holding the baby protectively. "Crying. Abandoned. Someone left her here to die." "That's my baby," Catherine cried, reaching out with arms that seemed stiff and unnatural. "That's my Lily. Oh, thank God you found her." Grace hesitated for just a moment, noticing how strange this all felt. "How long has she been missing?" she asked carefully as she handed the baby over. I don't know. Maybe 2 hours? I was on a phone call in my room, and when I checked her crib, she was gone. I thought I was losing my mind. The moment Lily was placed in Catherine's arms, the baby started crying again, louder this time, as if she was frightened. "She needs water," Grace said quickly, "and a clean diaper." She's very dehydrated. Yes, yes, of course, Catherine said, though her voice lacked the urgency a real mother would have. Before Grace could say anything else, Thomas Wellington came running through the doorway. His tie was loose, his hair messy, his face genuinely panicked, unlike his wife. Catherine found her. Catherine cried dramatically. Someone threw our baby in the trash, Thomas. Our baby. Thomas's face went pale as he took Lily into his arms. The baby calmed slightly, but her eyes stayed locked on Grace, as if she was the only person in the world she trusted. Grace, thank you, Thomas said, his voice shaking. If you hadn't been here, I can't even imagine. I just did what anyone would do, Grace said quietly. No, Thomas insisted. You saved her life. Catherine forced a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Grace has experience with children, she said lightly. She raised her own daughter, so this comes naturally to her. Maybe you could help take care of Lily for a while, Grace? Just until everything settles down. A cold feeling crawled up Grace's spine. Catherine's compliments always felt like poison wrapped in honey. But she nodded. Of course. Whatever Lily needs. That night, Thomas bought diapers, baby clothes, and formula. Catherine claimed she was too exhausted and went to her bedroom. Grace bathed Lily in the kitchen sink, washing away all the fear and filth. The baby relaxed for the first time, her tiny fingers gripping Grace's hand. You're safe now, Grace whispered. I promise you're safe. Lily smiled, a small, exhausted smile. And Grace felt something crack open in her chest. She hadn't held a baby since losing her own daughter 8 years ago in a car accident. The pain she'd buried so deep suddenly surfaced like a wound torn open again. When Grace turned off the kitchen light, she saw Catherine standing silently in the doorway, watching them. Their eyes met. Catherine smiled, but her eyes were cold. Dead cold. Good night, Grace, she said softly. Something in her tone told Grace this was only the beginning of something terrible. 2 weeks passed since that terrible night when Grace found baby Lily in the trash behind the Wellington mansion. 14 days that completely changed Grace's life in ways she never expected. Every morning now, Grace woke up at 5 o'clock, 30 minutes earlier than before, just to prepare Lily's first bottle. The baby, who used to wake up screaming in terror, now stirred quietly at the sound of Grace's footsteps. When Grace leaned over the small crib she'd set up in her room, Lily always greeted her the same way. Arms lifted high, eyes bright with trust, as if the world only made sense when Grace was near. Good morning, my sweet girl, Grace would whisper, lifting her gently. Did you sleep well? Lily would gurgle softly and nestle against her shoulder. The kind of affection that filled empty spaces in Grace's heart she thought had died forever. After feeding and bathing Lily each morning, Grace would dress her in the clothes Thomas had bought, place her in a stroller, and continue her housekeeping duties. The child stayed calm near Grace, quiet, curious, safe. But the mansion itself felt different now. Colder. More tense. Catherine moved through the house like a cat stalking prey, her eyes always watching, calculating. She barely touched Lily unless someone else was present. And when she did, it was only for show. One morning, Grace entered the kitchen to prepare Lily's second bottle and froze in shock. The baby bottles she had carefully cleaned, sterilized, and arranged the night before were lying in the sink, covered in dried formula, sticky juice, and greasy food. What? She whispered, picking them up one by one. She was absolutely certain she'd left them spotless. She remembered checking twice before bed. Grace washed them again, but unease settled in her stomach like a stone. Later that day, when she went to change Lily's diaper, she noticed something strange. The diaper had a clean, deliberate cut in it, like someone had taken scissors and sliced it open on purpose. That's not normal, Grace murmured, examining the precise line. Her instincts told her not to throw it away. She tucked it aside as evidence. Everything okay, Grace? A smooth voice drifted into the room. Grace turned to find Catherine standing in the doorway, looking impossibly perfect at 8 in the morning. Hair curled, makeup flawless, silk robe tied elegantly around her waist. Yes, Mrs. Wellington, Grace replied carefully. But Lily's diaper was cut open. Cut! Catherine stepped closer, pretending to be concerned. How strange. Maybe it tore while you were changing her. No, ma'am. The cut is clean. Like someone used scissors. Catherine's eyebrows lifted in fake surprise. Well, accidents happen. Maybe it was defective. You know how these cheap brands can be. Grace said nothing, but she knew the truth. Thomas had bought the most expensive diapers money could buy. That afternoon, Catherine hosted a tea party for 3 of her wealthy friends. Grace recognized them. Women dripping in diamonds and designer clothes, always eager to trade gossip like currency. Grace placed Lily's stroller nearby while she served tea and pastries. For a while, everything seemed peaceful. Then suddenly, Lily began screaming. Not a hungry cry, not a tired cry, a desperate, terrified scream that made Grace's blood run cold. "Oh dear," said one of the women, wrinkling her nose in disgust. "What's wrong with her?" "I don't know," Grace stammered, rushing over. She checked everything, diaper fine, temperature normal, not hungry. Nothing explained the intense crying. Grace lifted Lily, rocking her gently. "It's okay, sweet girl. It's okay." But Lily was inconsolable. Catherine's calm facade cracked just enough to reveal annoyance. "Grace, please," she hissed under her breath. "We're trying to have a conversation. Take her somewhere else." "I'm trying, ma'am. She's never cried like this before." "Well, maybe you're not doing something right," Catherine snapped. The remark hit Grace like a slap across the face. 12 years of perfect work reduced to nothing in front of guests. Grace carried Lily to the kitchen, where the baby sobbed for 20 agonizing minutes before finally calming down. When Grace returned to clear the tea set, she paused in the hallway. Catherine was speaking in a low voice to her friends. "I swear, she just can't handle the pressure anymore. It's the third time this week Lily has had an episode with her. Poor thing doesn't have much experience anymore at her age." One of the guests snickered. "Why rely on a housekeeper? Hire a professional nanny." Catherine sighed dramatically. "Thomas insists on Grace. But honestly, she's getting older. I'm afraid she's slipping." Grace's heart shattered into pieces. Helen, the cook who'd been standing nearby, whispered, "Ignore her, Grace. That woman has darkness in her soul." Grace nodded, though her hands trembled with hurt and anger. The next day, the family gathered for dinner. Grace was feeding Lily carrot puree, while Thomas and Catherine ate grilled salmon. Lily giggled as Grace brought the spoon close, and Thomas smiled warmly. "She's eating so well. You're doing a wonderful job, Grace." Catherine forced a smile. "Yes, she certainly is." Then, as Catherine reached for her glass of orange juice, she suddenly stumbled. The entire glass spilled directly onto Lily. The baby shrieked from the cold, sticky mess soaking her clothes. "Oh no!" Catherine gasped dramatically. "Grace, why weren't you paying attention? Look at her." Grace stared at her in disbelief. She had clearly seen Catherine tip that glass on purpose. "Ma'am, you spilled it," Grace said quietly. "You should have moved Lily when you saw me reaching for the glass," Catherine snapped. "Honestly, Grace, this is becoming a real problem." Thomas frowned. "Catherine, it was just an accident." Catherine pressed her lips together, annoyed. But Grace saw the truth gleaming in her eyes. This wasn't an accident. This was a setup. The first one, but definitely not the last. Later that night, Thomas called Grace to his study. "Grace, please sit," he said. She sat down, her nerves tight as piano wire. "Catherine told me what happened today. And about the crying yesterday during the tea. Are you feeling overwhelmed?" "No, sir. I promise Lily is well taken care of." Thomas sighed heavily. "I trust you, Grace. You've worked here 12 years without a single problem. But just please be more careful." She nodded, though her stomach twisted painfully. The seeds of doubt were being planted exactly where Catherine wanted them. The trap was closing around her, and Grace knew things were about to get much worse. You ever feel like you're trapped in a nightmare, and no matter how loud you scream, nobody can hear you? That's exactly where Grace found herself. Every day, Catherine found new ways to make her look incompetent, careless, dangerous. And every day, the walls closed in a little tighter. The next morning, Grace began her routine as always. Wake early, prepare Lily's bottle, start the laundry, organize the living room. But something felt wrong. That uneasy feeling you get right before something terrible happens. As she changed Lily's bed sheets that afternoon, something caught her eye. A baby bottle, filthy, covered in dried formula, and reeking of sour milk, was shoved under her pillow. Her stomach dropped to the floor. "No," she whispered, lifting it carefully. "I sterilized every single bottle last night. Every single one." Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Thomas appeared in the doorway, and his eyes immediately went to the bottle in her hands. "Grace, what is that?" he asked, his tone more confused than angry. "I found it under my pillow," she said, trying desperately to keep her voice steady. "I didn't put it there." Thomas stepped closer and sniffed it. His expression darkened. "Grace, you've never been careless like this." "I wasn't careless," she said, her voice cracking. "I swear to you, I didn't leave this here." He raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting someone planted it? Grace froze. How could she accuse Catherine without proof? How could she speak the truth without sounding paranoid, crazy, unhinged? I don't know what happened, she said quietly. But I didn't put it there. Thomas exhaled heavily. We're all tired. Mistakes happen. Just be more careful, Grace. He walked away, and Grace felt the walls closing in even tighter. The seed of doubt had grown a little deeper. Exactly as Catherine planned. 2 days later, Grace was in the garden with Lily. Sunlight streamed through the trees, birds sang sweetly, and the air smelled like fresh roses. Lily was giggling as Grace blew bubbles for her, tiny hands reaching up to pop them. She looked happier than Grace had ever seen her. Then came the sharp click of high heels on the stone path. She looks happy, Catherine's voice drifted over, smooth and controlled. Grace didn't turn around. She loves being outside. Catherine moved closer, her tone sweet but with ice underneath. Sometimes I worry she's too attached to you, Grace. Grace's breath caught in her throat. I'm just doing what's best for her, ma'am. Oh, I'm sure you think so, Catherine said with a light, cruel laugh. But you must remember your role here. You're the housekeeper. I'm her mother. Grace stiffened. Of course, Mrs. Wellington. Catherine crouched beside Lily, but the baby immediately tensed and scrambled back into Grace's lap. She doesn't even want to be near you, Catherine murmured, her voice dripping with venom. She's just shy, Grace said gently, trying to protect the child. Catherine's eyes sharpened like knives. Some women get confused, she said coldly. Especially women who've lost a child. They see a vulnerable baby and attach themselves too deeply, trying to replace what they lost. The words pierced Grace's heart like daggers. She knew exactly what Catherine was doing, weaponizing her deepest pain. Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about, Catherine whispered. You lost your daughter 8 years ago. Tragic. But trying to take my child to fill that void? That's unacceptable. Grace's voice trembled. I'm not trying to replace anyone. Know your place, Grace. Catherine stood up, brushing invisible dust from her designer dress. Lily is mine. Never forget that. She walked back toward the house, leaving Grace sitting there, holding Lily tightly, fighting back tears. 2 days later, everything exploded. That morning, the mansion felt like it was holding its breath. Lily had slept poorly, waking in bursts of terrified screams throughout the night. Grace rocked her in the darkness, whispering soothing words, wondering what nightmares haunted such a small child. By midday, Grace carried Lily to the kitchen for a snack. Catherine stood at the counter, chopping vegetables with a large chef's knife. The blade flashed dangerously under the overhead lights. You're just in time, Catherine said without looking up. I wanted to talk. About what? Grace asked quietly, instinctively holding Lily a little tighter. About Lily's schedule, her feeding routine. Everything needs to be stricter. She follows the pediatrician's recommendations, Grace replied carefully. Oh, please, Catherine said, turning suddenly with the knife still in her hand. I am her mother. I don't need some doctor telling me how to feed my own child. Grace took a small step backward. Catherine stepped forward. What did you mean earlier when you told Thomas you know what's best for her? Catherine's voice grew sharper, the knife glinting between them. I never said that. You act like she's yours, Catherine snarled. Every time I hold her, she cries. Every time you hold her, she relaxes. That isn't natural. She's just familiar with me, Grace whispered, her heart pounding. Right, Catherine said, her face twisted with rage. Because you inserted yourself into her life. You manipulated her. Grace tried to back away, but Catherine suddenly leaned in too close, too fast. She stumbled backward. The knife sliced across Catherine's palm. Ah! Catherine shrieked, dropping the knife. Blood trickled down her hand. Footsteps thundered through the house. What happened? Thomas burst into the kitchen, alarm written all over his face. Grace pushed me. Catherine sobbed, clutching her bleeding hand. She tried to take the knife. I don't know what's wrong with her. She was so angry. That's not true. Grace cried desperately. She tripped. I wasn't even close to her. Helen, the cook, had run in from the back door. I only saw the end, she said hesitantly. The knife was already on the ground. See? Catherine screamed, tears rolling perfectly down her cheeks. She was right next to me when it happened. Grace felt her entire world collapsing. Thomas, please. You know I would never hurt anyone. Thomas's face twisted with pain, confusion, and doubt. Grace, you've been under a lot of stress lately. No, I'm telling the truth. But Catherine, with tears streaming dramatically down her face, whispered, She needs help, Thomas. Look how obsessed she is with Lily. I'm scared of what she might do. Thomas's jaw clenched. Grace, maybe it's better if you take a few days off. No, Grace cried, her voice breaking. Lily needs me. Catherine smiled through her tears, triumphant. So you admit it? You think she's yours? Thomas's expression hardened. This has gone too far. Grace, I think you need to speak with a professional. A therapist. Grace felt everything crumbling around her. The trap was working perfectly. Catherine was winning. And somewhere deep inside, Grace knew the worst was yet to come. 1 month. That's how long it had been since Grace found baby Lily abandoned in the trash. 30 days of sleepless nights, whispered accusations, and fear disguised as concern. The Wellington mansion had become a battlefield, and Grace was losing the war. But she refused to give up. She started documenting everything: feeding times, diaper changes, medications, Lily's naps, and most importantly, every strange incident that happened. She kept a small notebook hidden under her mattress, because she knew someone was sabotaging her. And that someone was Catherine. Meanwhile, Lily was growing. The fragile baby Grace had found was now a toddler, wobbling around the living room, holding onto furniture, her dark curls bouncing with each unsteady step. She had started forming simple words. Up. No, Dada. But most significantly, she only said one word to one person. Mama. And she only said it to Grace. Every single time, Catherine's smile grew tighter and her eyes grew colder. One afternoon, Catherine announced she was hosting another tea party. I want my friends to see how well Lily is doing, she said sweetly, though her eyes were hard as stones. Grace dressed Lily carefully in a beautiful yellow dress Thomas had bought, matching shoes and a headband. The child looked like a little angel. At 3 o'clock, 4 wealthy women arrived, their voices echoing through the house like birds chirping in a cage. Catherine stepped into the garden holding Lily awkwardly, as if the baby were an expensive vase she was afraid to drop. Ladies, look at my beautiful daughter, she said proudly, her voice dripping with false affection. Oh, she's precious. She's adorable. She looks just like you, Catherine. Grace stood back near the doorway, clearing plates and serving refreshments. She watched Catherine hold Lily like a trophy, smiling on cue, pretending to be the perfect mother. She's such a calm baby, Catherine bragged. Never cries. At that exact moment, Lily's eyes found Grace across the garden. Her little arms shot out desperately. Mama, she cried loudly, clearly, unmistakably. The women froze mid-conversation. Mama? Did she just say mama? Everyone turned to look at Grace, who stood frozen with a serving tray in her hands. Catherine laughed nervously. Oh, children get confused at this age. Grace spends a lot of time with her. The attachment is normal. But Lily kept crying, reaching harder toward Grace, her face turning red with distress. Mama! Mama! She screamed. No, Catherine said through clenched teeth, holding the baby tighter. No, sweetheart. Mommy is here. I'm Mommy. The tighter she held, the harder Lily cried. Grace stepped forward instinctively. Mrs. Wellington, maybe she needs. Stop! Catherine snapped, glaring at her with pure hatred. Don't you dare embarrass me. But Grace saw something the others didn't. Catherine's fingers were digging into Lily's arm, squeezing too hard, leaving red marks. Mrs. Wellington, Grace said softly but firmly. You're hurting her. Don't tell me how to hold my own child, Catherine hissed. But the guests had seen the red marks blooming on Lily's tiny arm. Catherine, one woman whispered. Maybe Grace should take her. No. Catherine pulled Lily to her chest, her voice shaking with fury. She needs to learn who her real mother is. Lily's cries turned desperate, heartbreaking. Catherine turned her back to her friends, and Grace watched in horror as Catherine's hand moved sharply. She pinched Lily. Hard. Lily screamed. Mrs. Wellington, please. Grace rushed forward. Catherine spun around, her face a mask of fake innocence. What is wrong with you? She hissed. Are you accusing me of hurting my own child? I saw you. Enough! Catherine yelled loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. Before Grace could defend herself, the ladies began murmuring in shock and disbelief. Catherine cradled Lily, tears flowing dramatically down her cheeks. Grace has become unstable, she whispered to her guests. She keeps saying the most terrible things. I think she's losing her mind. The women gasped, shaking their heads in pity and judgment. Grace stood there, helpless, watching Catherine's Oscar-worthy performance destroy her reputation. Then Thomas stepped outside, alerted by the commotion. What's going on out here? Catherine ran to him, clutching Lily dramatically. Grace accused me of hurting Lily, she sobbed. In front of everyone. She's out of control, Thomas. Thomas turned to Grace, disappointment flooding his face. Grace, why would you say something like that? I saw her pinch the baby, Grace said, her voice strained with desperation. I saw it with my own eyes. The guests chimed in immediately. She seemed very emotional. Maybe she's overwhelmed. She did rush forward rather aggressively. Thomas closed his eyes, clearly torn. Grace, this has to stop. An hour later, a doctor arrived for an emergency wellness check. He examined Grace in Thomas's study while Catherine comforted her guests in the living room, playing the victim perfectly. Grace, the doctor said gently, stress can make us see things that aren't really there. Misinterpret situations. I'm not misinterpreting anything, Grace insisted, her voice breaking. I'm telling you the truth. Please examine Lily. She may have bruises. Grace, the doctor sighed. Thomas and Catherine both told me the child is fine. Please, Grace begged. Just check her. Please. But the doctor simply closed his medical bag and went to speak with Thomas in private. Grace knew, in that moment, she was losing. The walls had finally closed in completely. That night, as Grace lay in her small room, she heard Lily crying upstairs. Weak, exhausted, terrified crying that broke her heart into a million pieces. And through the air vents, she heard Catherine's cold voice drifting down. Cry all you want, little girl. Tomorrow she's gone. And then you'll have nobody. Grace sat up in bed, tears streaming down her face. She had less than 24 hours to prove the truth. Less than one day to save an innocent child from a monster. She didn't know how she would do it, but she knew she had to try. Because sometimes love is the only weapon you have left. The night before Grace's deadline felt like the longest night of her life. Every hour she heard Lily crying, hoarse, exhausted, desperate. And every hour Catherine's cruel voice echoed through the vents. Cry louder. Tomorrow she's gone forever. Grace sat on her small bed, hands trembling, eyes red from sleeplessness and tears. She had 24 hours to prove the truth. 24 hours to save Lily from a woman capable of unspeakable evil. At dawn, Grace stepped out of her room just as Helen, the cook, entered the kitchen. Grace, I heard everything last night, Helen whispered urgently, her eyes filled with worry. That woman is dangerous. You need proof. Real proof. How? Grace whispered desperately. She never hurts Lily when others can see. Helen's expression changed, her face set with determination. Grace, yesterday during the tea party. I saw her pinch the baby. Grace's breath stopped completely. You did? Helen nodded firmly. I didn't say anything because I was scared. But if you get fired, Lily has nobody to protect her. I'll tell Thomas what I saw. I'll testify to the truth. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered in Grace's chest like a small candle in the darkness. At 9 o'clock that morning, Thomas called Dr. Reynolds back to the house for a full examination of Lily before making his final decision about Grace. Catherine stood near the dining table holding Lily, who looked like a ghost of herself, pale, dark circles under her eyes, barely moving, whimpering weakly instead of crying. Dr. Reynolds lifted Lily gently onto the examination table. She's severely dehydrated, he murmured, concern etched on his face. And extremely fatigued. This isn't normal. Catherine clasped her hands dramatically. It's all the stress. Yesterday was so overwhelming for everyone. The doctor carefully rolled up Lily's tiny sleeves. He froze, his expression shifting from concern to alarm. There were bruises. Faint but unmistakable. In the shape of adult fingers. These aren't from falls, Dr. Reynolds said quietly but firmly. These are pinch marks. And some of them are several days old. Catherine's perfect smile faltered. Doctor, babies bruise easily. Not like this, he interrupted, his voice steady and professional. These are deliberate marks. Someone has been hurting this child. Thomas's face drained of all color. He turned slowly toward Grace. Grace, did you? No, Grace said sharply, her voice ringing with truth. I would never, ever hurt this child. Never. Lily, as if understanding the conversation, crawled off the examination table and clung desperately to Grace's leg. Mama, stay, she whimpered. Mama, stay. At that exact moment, Thomas's parents, who had stayed another night out of growing concern, entered the dining room. Oh dear God, Thomas's mother whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Look how that baby clings to Grace. That's not normal attachment. That's survival. We need answers, Thomas's father said firmly, his voice carrying the weight of authority. Right now. Dr. Reynolds knelt beside Lily, speaking gently. Lily, sweetheart, can you tell me who hurt you? Who gave you these bruises? Everyone held their breath. Lily lifted her tiny hand and pointed, clear as day, straight at Catherine. A thick, suffocating silence filled the room. Catherine's eyes went wide, her carefully constructed mask beginning to crack at the edges. She's confused, Catherine said quickly, her voice rising with panic. She's just a baby. She doesn't know what she's saying. But Lily wasn't finished. She touched the bruises on her little arms with trembling fingers. Hurts, she said softly. Mama Catherine hurts Lily. Hurts here. Catherine's face went pale as paper. Thomas staggered backward, grabbing the table for support. Catherine, tell me this isn't true. Tell me she's wrong. She doesn't know what she's saying. Catherine's voice cracked with desperation. Grace has been manipulating her, poisoning her mind against me. But Lily turned and pointed toward the window, toward the trash bins outside in the back alley. Trash, Lily said in her simple toddler vocabulary, her voice clear and heartbreaking. Lily and trash. Mama Grace saved Lily. The room erupted in gasps of shock and horror. Grace never told her she was found in the trash, Thomas whispered, his voice barely audible. Only you and I knew that, Catherine. Only us. Catherine's mask shattered completely. Her face twisted with rage and panic. That child ruined everything, she suddenly screamed, her voice raw and vicious. You think I wanted some random baby dumped on me? You think I was going to let her destroy my life, my inheritance, my freedom? Everyone stared in absolute disbelief. You put her in the trash, Thomas said, his voice shaking. You tried to kill her. Your own. She's not mine, Catherine shrieked. She's not my biological child. She was left on our doorstep, and I wanted nothing to do with her. The front door burst open. Thomas's father had called the police. 2 officers stepped inside, their faces grim. Catherine Wellington, one announced, pulling out handcuffs. You're under arrest for child endangerment, child abuse, attempted murder, and obstruction of justice. This is a setup, Catherine screamed as they handcuffed her. Thomas, do something. Do something. But Thomas stepped back, tears streaming down his face. He looked at Grace with pain, guilt, and deep, overwhelming gratitude. Grace, he whispered, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. The officers led Catherine away as she screamed, ranted, and hurled accusations into the air. Lily watched quietly, then buried her face in Grace's neck, her small body finally relaxing. Grace rubbed her back gently, tears streaming down her face. It's over, sweetheart. You're safe now. You're finally safe. 3 weeks had passed since that terrible morning when the truth finally came to light. 3 weeks since Catherine Wellington was arrested and taken away in handcuffs. 3 weeks since justice was finally served. The Wellington mansion felt different now, lighter, warmer, like a house that had been holding its breath for months and could finally exhale. The tension that had hung in the air like thick fog had lifted, replaced by something Grace hadn't felt in that house for a long time. Peace. Lily was thriving. The pale, frightened child who barely made a sound was now laughing again, learning new words every day, sleeping peacefully through the night. Her cheeks had color again. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity instead of fear. She was becoming the happy, healthy child she was always meant to be. One warm Saturday afternoon, Grace sat beneath the old oak tree in the garden with Lily in her lap. The little girl picked a fallen yellow leaf and placed it carefully in Grace's hand, like it was the most precious gift in the world. For Mama, she said softly, her voice filled with innocent love. Grace kissed her forehead, feeling her heart swell with emotion. Thank you, my sweet girl. It's beautiful. Helen came out from the kitchen, carrying a tray with lemonade and cookies, a warm smile on her face. You saved her life, Grace, she said, setting the tray down on the garden table. You know that, right? Grace looked down at Lily, who was now trying to stack small pebbles into a tower, completely absorbed in her simple joy. Maybe, Grace said quietly, she saved mine too. Helen nodded knowingly and headed back inside, leaving them in their peaceful moment. From the upstairs window, Thomas watched them. His daughter, safe, happy, loved. His home, finally whole again. He had failed to see the truth when it mattered most, had doubted the one person who truly cared for Lily. That guilt would stay with him for a long time. But he could make it right. He had to make it right. Thomas walked down the stairs and out into the garden, his footsteps soft on the grass. Grace looked up as he approached. Grace, he began, his voice gentle but serious. I need to talk to you about something important. Grace felt a flutter of nervousness. Of course, Mr. Wellington. Please call me Thomas, he said, sitting down on the bench beside them. Lily immediately reached for him, and he scooped her up with a smile. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few weeks. Grace waited, her heart beating faster. I don't want you to be the housekeeper anymore, Thomas said. Grace's stomach dropped. Was he letting her go? After everything? But then he continued. I want you to stay here permanently as Lily's full-time caregiver. Not as staff, Grace. As family. Your own room, a real salary, real respect, and most importantly, legal guardianship rights. I want to make sure that if anything ever happens to me, you're protected. And Lily is protected. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Thomas, I don't know what to say. Say yes, he said with a sad smile. You're the only mother she's ever truly known. The only person who saw her, protected her, loved her when no one else would. You risked everything for her. That's what real mothers do. A tear rolled down Grace's cheek. It would be the greatest honor of my life. Thomas reached out and squeezed her hand. Thank you, Grace. For everything. For never giving up on her. For seeing the truth when I was too blind to see it myself. Lily squirmed out of Thomas's arms and crawled back into Grace's lap, wrapping her small arms around her neck. Mama home, she whispered softly into Grace's ear. Lily home. And in that moment, sitting beneath the oak tree in the golden Chicago sunset, Grace finally felt it. That deep, complete sense of belonging she thought she'd lost forever when her own daughter died 8 years ago. Her heart, which had been broken and buried for so long, had finally found a reason to beat again. Love had won. Truth had won. Justice had won. And a little girl who'd been thrown away like garbage now had the mother she deserved. A mother who would protect her, cherish her, and love her unconditionally for the rest of her life. Sometimes the family you find is more precious than the family you're born into. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about romance. They're about a housekeeper and a baby who saved each other. And sometimes, just sometimes, broken hearts can heal when they find each other in the darkness. Grace held Lily close, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair, feeling her tiny heartbeat against her chest. I love you, my sweet girl, she whispered. Love Mama, Lily whispered back. And for the first time in 8 long years, Grace Bennett felt truly, completely whole again. Thank you for watching this story. If it touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear a story about hope, truth, and the incredible power of a mother's love. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? What did you think of Grace's journey? We'd love to hear from you.